Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to do a rundown of all the questions that I've had regarding international travel, specifically to the US. Things that maybe I didn't answer or that you didn't catch in the vlogs. Any questions you might have, hopefully I'm going to answer them in this video. So I'm going to kick off at the very beginning of the whole process because I've had a lot of questions about testing. So when we tested, it was 3 days before travel. When they talk about days before travel, it's not hours, it's not like 72 hours, 48 hours, 24 hours, it is the day. I realize this is going to change over time. You may see this in 6 months, it may be different again. In another 12 months, it may be different again. But I'm going to say that this is probably going to be the constant. If it says 1 day before, it is 1 day before you travel. If it says 3 days before, it's 3 whole days before you travel. So it's not 24 hours before you arrive. It's not 24 hours before you depart. It is the full day. So if I were you, I would be booking the earliest possible slot on the earliest possible day. So for example, for us, we were able to do it 3 days before, which feels like a luxury now. 3 days before. So we were traveling on the Tuesday. We did Saturday morning, 9 o'clock. Between 9 and 9:30, all 4 of us were tested. We did a lateral flow, also called an antigen test. We did it via the internet, so someone was watching us. We did basically like a Zoom call. We did this through a company called QURED, it's QURED. You will always be able to find discount codes. We used one that we found through BA, but I know other people used that exact same BA discount code that weren't flying through BA. So look for codes, you will find a deal somewhere. Within an hour and a half, we'd got all of our negative certificates back and I could add them to the Verifly app. This was my other most questioned thing. Verifly, I think, is absolutely fantastic. I don't know which airlines use it. I know that at very least British Airways does, because that's who we flew through. I don't know if Virgin are using it. I've watched videos of people traveling with Virgin and they're not even mentioning Verifly. So I just don't know. But if your airline is prompting you to sign up to Verifly and use this app, use it. It's so much easier. It makes the whole process so much more streamlined when you get to the airport, and I can't recommend it enough. It seems like a bit of a ball ache while you're doing it, but once you get to the airport and you realize how much time you've saved, it's worth it. Plus, you put all of your information in there. So for example, initially you put in your vaccinations, then you put in your negative COVID test. All of that stuff is checked either automatically through the app or it's actually physically looked at. You know, by the time you get to the airport, it's already been verified and you're not going to be in a position where they say, this isn't the right documentation. Having used it both entering the UK and coming back from the UK, it definitely seems like a time saver. It also gives you a checklist at the very end for each traveller. Now, if you're travelling with people of different ages, this is super useful as well, because we had both myself and my husband who were obviously over 18, and then we had 2 under 18s, but I wasn't sure whether or not the under 18s were both going to be exactly the same, or because my daughter's 16, she's in that 12 to 18 bracket, that's a bit of a grey area. It really helped to make me feel like we'd done everything that we possibly could have done and that I was just checking every single box, because it's really difficult to find information about flying with children right now, especially with children that are over 12. So I just found that to be kind of like one extra layer of comfort, because as I say, I just really struggled to find that information, and a lot of it I felt like I was going to get to the airport and be like, have we got everything? Is this even right? Can she even be here? Next questions were, what did we need while we were actually in America? So when we arrived in America, nobody needed anything at all. It was exactly the same as any other time we have entered into the US. They didn't want to see vaccination passes. They didn't want to see negative test results. They just took our passport. That was that. If you have never been to the US before and you are signing up for an ESTA, which is kind of like a travel visa now, they don't even look at that. That's all automatically within. If you want to print those things off and have them with you for your personal peace of mind, go for it. But I've never ever known for anyone to ask for that in person. No one's ever questioned the ESTA. No one's ever questioned anything else, any other documentation. And this was no different. So the actual airport part of it, exactly the same. Obviously you wear a mask the entire time on the plane, airport both sides. Then when we got to America, this is going to change state to state. So in New York, they don't have a mask mandate as such, and it's going to change dependent on what you're doing. But if you are fully vaccinated, the law within the state, and I say the law because it just seems to be everyone kind of has their own rules, but the actual legal requirement is if you are fully vaccinated, you don't have to wear a mask. You do have to provide proof of vaccination and a photo ID if you want to dine indoors and if you want to go to any kind of entertainment venue. So we went to Radio City. I was like, name. We went to Radio City. This was the same when we went to Empire State as well. Obviously, any kind of dining indoors, and every single restaurant we went to was super hot on it. From really, really fancy, posh places that we did not feel like we belonged in to IHOP. IHOP had also, alongside all of the regular checks, they were also doing temperature checks. So they had a little temperature gauge like on the wall, and you put your wrist up to it and they knew what your temperature was. They are on it. So be prepared for that. You can get into New York right now if you are under 18 and not fully vaccinated, but you can't indoor dine. You can't do anything if you're over 12. Between 12 and 18 is just a really difficult age for this stuff, but between 12 and 18, you can't do anything unless you can prove that you've been vaccinated. Now, because Ella has been vaccinated, she's just had the one vaccination because she can only have one so far. She was only called for a second one days before we travelled. I didn't take a photo ID with her because I didn't want to take the passport out with us. That wasn't a problem. I don't know whether if I'd said she's 16, she's not vaccinated, if that would have been a problem. But everything I read suggested that it would. So be prepared to show your NHS pass and your photo ID every single time you enter anywhere where you're going to be sitting down. It's pretty much a rule of thumb. Also, I used the NHS pass via the wallet on the iPhone. We all used it that way. That wasn't a problem. I don't know if they would accept a printout. That's the way we did it. I'm sure they would accept it through the app specifically. We didn't download the NYC specific COVID app. Nobody asked for it. Everyone was absolutely happy with the regular COVID pass through our iPhones. Now, one major thing did change while we were traveling. And so it's worth noting that you are going to have to keep your ear to the ground and make sure that you are keeping up with any kind of changes in the rules while you're on holiday, which is a pain because you're on holiday, but it is what it is. It's the nature of travel right now. So the main change that we had was that the antigen test that we'd originally booked for when we arrived home were no longer going to be accepted. It needed to be a PCR. We needed to fill in a passenger locator form 2 days before arriving in the UK. We had to have our order code for those PCR tests when we filled in that locator form. So this is where it got a little bit tricky because we found out that that change was going to come into effect, I think, the day before we went. And so we were able to get a refund on our antigen tests because we literally just booked it. I left it till the absolute last minute to book our day 2 tests for arriving home. So we got our refund, that was no problem. We'd booked those through QURED as well. And they were great. Customer service through QURED, I would absolutely recommend them if they're the right price. We then found, because PCR tests are considerably more expensive than antigen, we then found a really good deal through a brand called RANDOX. We live near Meadowhall in Sheffield and they do a collection service. So we ordered them one day, went to collect them the next day, and we ordered 4. I think it ended up costing us about £150, which is an absolute steal for 4 PCR tests. We left them in the car because we had a plan. And obviously we had the email with the order code on there that we would need for the locator form while we were on holiday. So 2 days before we entered back into the UK, and this is actually 48 hours before you actually land in the UK, you do a passenger locator form. If you've ever had to do any kind of tax return, it's all on the government website, HMRC, whatever it is. I'll try to remember to link it for you below, but dead simple, really kind of like fill in this information, next, fill in this information, next. It's really, really low stress. A pain to have to do it while you're on holiday, but it is what it is. So you fill all of your information in. You're going to need your passport number, you needed your flight information, and you needed your order number for your tests, for your PCR tests, which should be on your email if you've ordered it that way. I couldn't find a way of adding 2 adults to this. So I did a form for myself and the children because I could add minors onto my form and Lee did his own form. If there's a way, let me know because I couldn't find one. But it's no big deal if you end up having to do all separate ones, it's fine. You just have to set up an account for each person that's going to do it. And again, it's fairly simple. Government forms I find to be, fairly straightforward. Once you've finished that, you'll get an email and you'll get an official document that you can download and you can upload that to Verifly. Now, one thing we didn't have to do that you will have to do now is an antigen test pre-flight. So before you come home, you have to do this extra test. I can't speak to what this is going to involve, but I'm going to assume it's something similar to the one on the way out. Now, pre-extra information being given to us, the tests we were expecting to have to do on the way out to the US were self-tests that we then took a picture of the results next to our passport, sent it off to QURED, They then send the certificate back. It was then put in place that that had to be a witness test, which we did online, not a problem. As far as I know, from what I've read, the test coming home from the US does not need to be a witness test. This is just a self-test. Take a picture of the result next to your passport, send it off to QURED, RANDOX, whoever it is that you're using. Within however long, probably an hour or so, you'll have your certificate. You can upload that to your Verifly app, or you'll have a printout, or you have whatever it is that you're going to do to take to the airport. And that's your evidence of your negative test to fly home. At this point, we discovered, because we were using Verifly, that the children didn't actually need to have PCR tests on the way home. Everything we'd read seemed like they did. And I'm still yet to find really black and white information about that. But it didn't ask for it. So I don't know. We all tested with rapid flows anyway, and Lee and I had our negative PCR results back, which I'll talk about in a second. So I'm not concerned in any way. You can obviously do the PCRs if you wish to. You could even get some free PCR tests and do them that way. It's just worth noting, because this stuff is expensive, and especially because the rules change all the time, if you can save a little bit of money, and if it's becoming kind of unaffordable with all of the different restrictions in place, as far as I can see, under 18s do not need the PCR on arrival currently with the current rules. So here's a really, really important point that I did make in the vlogs, but in case you missed it, the day 2 tests do not need to be done on day 2. They need to be done on day 2 or before. So we left our tests in our car, knowing that we were going to get closer to a drop-off station, which is actually our local airport, quite close to where we live. And we went to the drop-off station, sanitized our hands, blew our noses, did all of the things we were supposed to do. And then we did the PCR test in the car. We dropped them off at the RANDOX drop-off station before we'd even got home, day of landing. We did it then, dropped it off, went home. By 11 o'clock that night, Lee and I had emails saying that they were being tested in the lab. By 8 o'clock the following morning, we had our negative results. You don't need to submit that information anywhere, because when you do your passenger locator form and you put in your RANDOX order number, it also has your, all of your information, including your passport number. So if they needed to track you or something, they can track us. They can find us wherever we are, but you don't need to actually report that data anywhere. Obviously, you have to isolate until you get your negative results. And so if you are looking to minimize that amount of time, I would highly recommend you go and do that day 1. Literally land, get that test done. You can actually test at centres near airports. So you could even arrive, let's say at Heathrow, go and find their local testing place, be tested before you go home. If you want to do it like in person, have someone test you, you can do that too. But it's just worth noting, a lot of people think you have to do them on day 2. You can do them as soon as you get home. I'm just looking through the questions to see if I'm missing anything. One person did ask if they were super strict about masks in America. Where we were, yes, they were. So as I was saying about not needing a mask if you are double vaccinated, most places you saw a lot of people walking around without a mask. Certain places you would walk into, it said on the door, masks are recommended. Certain places it said if you are double vaccinated, you don't need to wear a mask. And some places it said everyone has to wear a mask. We just found it to be safest to just wear a mask everywhere. The kids were wearing masks anyway, and it felt very much like we can't ask them to do something that we're not prepared to do ourselves. And really, in the grand scheme of things, it didn't feel like some great hardship since we'd actually been able to get there. There was also another thing that we weren't sure about before we got there, and forums really helped us with this, because we saw something that said, any unvaccinated person, so this is any unvaccinated person, which as I understand it is only US residents that are allowed into the US without being vaccinated, or under 18s, have to do a lateral flow test. Well, I don't even think it said that. I think it just said you have to do a COVID test on day 3 or 5 of entering the US. So we took lateral flow tests, and we all took them like halfway through the trip. Nobody ever asked about them. We didn't report it anywhere, so I don't know, but we took the tests with us anyway. We took photos to make sure, just in case anyone asked, but nobody did. And the number 1 most asked question was it worth the stress leading up to the trip? I don't know if I can answer that question, because it's going to be so relative to the person. I had an amazing time. It felt like a complete once-in-a-lifetime trip. That said, I don't think it was worth the stress. It was fantastic. One of the best holidays. But it's not just, you're not talking about just the travel experience. You're not talking about a few days prior, not even weeks. It's months. It completely sucks the joy out of any anticipation that you would have for a holiday. And so I would say, if you haven't got anything booked and you're thinking, I might book a holiday, is it worth the stress? Currently, I would say no. I would say that if you are adults that are prepared to kind of wing it, and on the day you'll see what happens, great, perfect. You are the ideal people for this. If it is a really big holiday, like something you would love to be able to look forward to, like this was a massive holiday for us. And the only reason that I didn't change it was we've got such a bargain on it. I thought we'll probably never rebook it. And then we'll never go to New York at Christmas. It all just felt fated that we would be there. And I'm so, so happy that we went for that reason. But if we'd booked this and it had been February, we absolutely would have rebooked it, because it wasn't worth the incredible stress leading up to it. We actually have another trip booked at the end of January, and I'm really on the fence about it because it's for our 10th anniversary. We will be in Las Vegas for our 10th wedding anniversary, and we were planning on renewing our vows. We were going to get a photographer because we didn't have a proper photographer the first time. We were going to do this whole thing, and the reason that I've held on to it so much is for the same reason that I did with the Christmas one. The dates were important. It's significant. It's not a random time during the year for just a holiday. This was like, oh my God, we're going to take the kids to New York to see New York at Christmas. This is like bucket list stuff. And the Vegas trip is on our 10th wedding anniversary, and we can't get that date back. And so currently I'm tempted to go with the flow and just see what happens. And if we can't go, we can't go. But we can't make any plans. I can't book anything that's non-refundable. I can't even book a photographer because we may not be able to go. Restrictions may change last minute. We may test positive the day before we fly. Anything could happen. And so, although I still want to go because the date is significant, I can't really look forward to it, and it's really sucking out the joy. You know, champagne problems, it's not important in the grand scheme of things, but I know that people are asking for a reason, and I think a lot of people would expect me to say, no, it was absolutely worth all of the stress because it was the most amazing holiday. It was the most amazing holiday. But if I'm speaking to you from an advice perspective, if you are considering booking something, I would say it's not worth the stress, because you book a holiday and you have that flurry of excitement, and you don't have that now. You don't have that until you get some kind of semblance of normality back and we actually know something. Currently, we're in a world of complete unknowns and no control, and we're considering booking a family holiday for 2023. We're not booking anything else for next year. I did get some New York specific questions. If you have any questions about New York, you know, like getting around, places that I would say you must go and see, let me know and I'll do a follow-up on that. I just wanted to talk specifically about the travel, the restrictions, how it was being there, what it was like, you know, with the testing and all of that stuff. I know it's a lot of information and I can talk, but hopefully some of you who did have some questions will get some really good information from this. And if we do end up traveling in January, I will do an update with the whatever rules there are then, and I will let you know.